Get your stinking rat out. It's late night large.
Welcome to a late night large, living among the lepers. Frantically scrubbing 18 layers of skin off with bleach is me, Aaron Bliss, and wondering what all the fuss is about is Mike Large. How are we doing, Mike?
Yeah, I'm alright. Not sure what all this fuss is about, but yeah.
Yeah. Glad to see you're still COVID-free, Mike.
Yep.
Very good. So we've reached almost mid-December. We both apparently have avoided COVID transmission, which is a positive. I don't know about anyone listening, but hopefully you have too. And things have changed because since last we spoke, the second lockdown in inverted commas, because it wasn't really a lockdown, it was just a lockdown of it was a lockdown of leisure, really. So the leisure lockdown has ended and we've gone into the tiered system. We're in tier 2. I feel yeah, had to get your didn't you have to get your tier tattoo removed when you came out of prison, Mike? Yeah. Yeah, I thought so. So we won't go into what prison tattoos denote. So now we're in tier 2. I feel bad for people in tier 3, but in terms of where we are in tier 2, Mike, have you noticed? Has it been a change that you've noticed? Has drastically improved your quality of life? Do we seem to be in a happier place now, or what do you think?
I'm not certain. I mean, for me, I mean, I can go to the gym.
Right.
That's about it, really, isn't it? Like, what's
the only impact it's had?
Like, play golf, football's back on, things like that. So, I don't mean professional football. Obviously, that never stopped, but football's back on. So, yeah, like, I guess for a lot of people, actually, just the few little bones that we've been thrown, actually probably for a lot of people, I guess do kind of mean a lot, do make a big difference. But most things, I'm not sure day to day what's really changed, nor should it really.
Yeah, that's true.
It's still, can't really go around your mate's house, or the problem, and it is a problem,
right?
Is the tier system before pre-lockdown 2 was. I mean, it was okay. It was an idea that it was a bit different, and people could kind of they could accept where there were leniencies in certain things in certain areas, and for a lot of people it probably looked like a kind of a positive thing, a step in the right direction. But fresh out of a lockdown, I don't think people will feel the same way. They're not going to be like, oh yeah, there's this new tier system. It's like, well, it's not new anymore, and it's just a slightly, for most people, shitter version of what you had before we went into the lockdown.
Yeah.
It's harder to get people behind it, but also easier in a way that they get some freedoms back. So I don't know. I guess it depends on the person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That what it actually, how it affects their life individually, and I guess kind of the level of skepticism they have over the whole thing anyway, I imagine. What about you? Affected you?
I have to admit, I I haven't, hand on heart, being a natural introvert anyway. Obviously, I miss seeing my close friends, and obviously you, Mike. Although
Yeah, we don't.
I see virtual you, but we we don't get to have a good old bum after the show like we normally do.
It's a shame.
Yeah, but I think I've not really been that affected. Well, I don't think I have been that negatively affected by a lot of the restrictions because, to be honest, I've just got very, very close to my Xbox. To be quite frank, it's obviously it's, it's difficult not seeing your closest friends hanging out, having a few tins or hanging out at their house.
Relaxing, all cool.
Yeah,
Yes,
Mike.
Yeah,
hanging with the Fresh Prince, that kind of thing. And obviously, for a lot of people, the lack of sex has been bad. Unless you sneak off into the woods, you're not technically allowed to visit your lover in there. But no, to be honest, I don't feel like it's affecting me that badly. But I have to admit, hand on heart, I've realised that my mental health has been a little bit ropey recently. But it's not, to me, it's not to do with COVID. I mean, we'll discuss it later. It's everything else that's going on and will happen next year. So just in terms of COVID, I don't know about you, Mike, as well, but I'm obviously not going to name who it was, but there was a particular friend who got kind of irritated because they wanted to kind of meet up in their house because it had been such a long time and they wanted to kind of, have a good friendly catch up or whatever. And I was just like, yeah, that'd be great once the once the restrictions ease. And they got a bit pissed off, like as if I was silly for like adhering too much to the government guidance. And I had to sort of say, no, hold on. Like I'm the one friend you have that understands exactly how bad the government is. It's not that I'm slavishly adhering to the government. It's like basic logic and listening to the science. Like, I do have, even though I don't consider myself vulnerable, I have an underlying health condition, so why would I take unnecessary risks to potentially contract COVID? And the other thing is, if I can't visit my missus to get some action, I'm not going to go over to a random friend's house, even if it's just a nice catch up or a meal or a coffee or something. Do you know what I mean?
Unless that results in some action.
Touche. But yeah, I don't know whether that's just me, but do you know what I mean? So this is where you get people with different levels of tolerance for the rules. And this is where so I'm going to ask you a question now, Mike, because I think that's almost certainly caused by the government, their messaging, their ropey messaging. So I'm going to ask you this question. Don't get me wrong. Let's cut anti-vaxxers and dickheads like that completely out of the equation. I'm just talking about people who are skeptical and are kind of getting tired of the consistent restrictions. Maybe even their mental health driving them to like, no, I just need to meet up with people now. I need to hang out. I don't care what the government says. I'm going to ask you this question, Mike.
Right.
Do you think that things, or rather, do you think do you think the reason why there's probably a significant and growing part of the population that seems to be absolutely sick of the restrictions and the requirement to wear masks and not being able to visit people in their homes, and the people who are kind of almost disregarding that now, do you think part of that is the fact that the government, and particularly the Prime Minister, is obsessed with this idea of continually giving these completely contrary, optimistic forecasts? Like, instead of staying serious and saying, we're in a serious time, we're on the right course, but we need to keep it going, it's always 1 week, it's like, well, you're going to have to stay at home and we don't want you to do this and we don't want you to do that, so please don't do any of it. And then the next month it's like, we need to regain that buccaneering spirit. I want to see hustle and bustle and everyone, we're going to save Christmas. Do you think that has contributed to a lot of people saying, I'm not fucking paying attention to these new restrictions. Like the inconsistency and the incoherence. And so what I mean is, compare it to the little boy who cried wolf. If somebody keeps telling you things are getting better, it's around the corner, freedom is around the corner, and yes, we're there now, and then suddenly the restrictions are back, and it's like everything's closed again, and it's cold and it's miserable. I mean, surely anyone's going to get pissed off at that kind of thing. Why give people false hope all the time? I mean,
well, I think there's two schools of thought probably on that one.
Yeah, okay. Which side do you fall into?
For me, I would rather. I'm very conscious of the fact that everyone's different and everyone's in their own circumstances and their own situation. For me, tell me straight. In fact, give me worst case.
It's ironic you say that, yeah.
Let me come to terms with that. And then, anything better than that is a Brucey.
Brucey.
So, yeah, Brucey bonus, isn't it? But I don't think. I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because, well, actually, do we give people false hope or glimmers of hope that maybe is slightly stretching the truth or the reality of the situation, or do we not and just say, look, actually, let's fucking make this as serious as it is, if not more so, get the message across. Now, the false hope thing, that is, for me, I'm in another camp. I'm camped. Just fucking look. What is the situation? None of the bullshit. None of the namby-pamby. Oh, maybe at some point you can do this and it'll be great. And fuck off, right? What is the situation? How bad is it? What have we got to do? Lay it out there. Tell me straight. Where are we at? What is going to happen? Is this is going to be really shit. It's going to happen for this amount of time. Sooner you come to terms with it, the better. Deal with it. Cool. All right. I'll hate it. I can agree with it. I can disagree with it. But I know where I'm at with it. Now, the constantly changing things, saying stuff that's stupid or probably deliberately misleading, or like the false hope you talked about. Now, there's reasons for that as well. So, and I do believe that some people probably benefit from a little bit of that. There are people that probably have needed a little bit of that at times to get through and to have something to hold on to, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, maybe.
Okay, hang on.
Gloom. Also, though, what I would just say first is, obviously, as we know and can accept that as a good and positive reason for doing so. If that is genuinely the case, but also there's we need to try and keep people sweet as well. Let's always having to do all this really shit stuff. So let's just keep people sweet a little bit, because at some point these people are going to have to vote for us again.
Very cynical, but yeah, no, I was erring towards that interpretation. I mean, the number one question that comes out of that, Mike, because I mean, you summed it up quite well. So there is definitely an argument that there are some particularly vulnerable people. I'm not just talking about physically, I'm talking about mentally, there are mentally vulnerable people, and if you were to tell them this is the situation, it's bad, it's not going to get better till we get a vaccine. This could be, could be a year or more. Yeah, that's going to hit people so hard. But then the argument against that is, why is it the government's job to cheer people up? The government's job is to look after us and to inform us. It's not to make people think that something is kind of
No, but
positive.
I would argue that trying to safeguard people's mental health is looking after us.
Do you think it was done for that reason, though? You've just suggested that it wasn't.
No, now I suggested a couple of reasons why.
Yeah, okay.
One of them being that, one of them not being that. Now, I'm not saying. Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, right? Although I personally, just me, would rather be in the other camp, would rather have it the other way. If I'm honest, I think it's probably a bit of both, isn't it?
Okay.
I do a bit of both in there as to why.
Okay, let me say this though, Mike. Let me say this. So there are a significant portion of the current government who describe themselves as right libertarians. Now, for anyone who's not aware of that, a libertarian is someone who believes in as little government as possible, the freedom of the individual and stuff. Now, right libertarians tend to be hypocrites, but I won't go into that now. But what they mean is, so one of their credos is they don't think the government should be responsible for a lot of things. So, for instance, a lot of the anti-mask idiots and stuff, they're supported by some of these people who say it's not up to the government to tell me what to do when I'm going shopping and all this kind of stuff. So my argument is, and don't get me wrong, I know these people aren't reasonable, but what I'm saying is, if you want to have that opinion, which is the government shouldn't fanny around and advise people and get involved in people's lives outside of like protecting them or defending the realm kind of thing. If you honestly believe that, how can you then support Boris Johnson effectively lying to cheer people up? Because that's not the government's job. The government's job is to inform the public and if possible, to protect the public. It's not to make people feel better. Do you see what I mean? Because they'd call it the nanny state, wouldn't they? Oh, it's the nanny state. Government telling people what to do, patting them on the head. Is it not? Don't get me wrong, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I don't believe it's nanny state. I'm saying that these people and their beliefs, that surely should be what they think.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's what I said. Like I say, I agree with parts of what you said. I think definitely protecting some people's mental health. I mean, let's be honest. We're talking about protecting the ignorance mental health, because when I say ignorant, I don't mean stupid. I mean people who are politically ignorant. They don't really understand what's going on. So you're saying, you're basically patting them on the head and saying, listen, bit of hard sacrifice and things will look better soon. Don't worry about it. Okay, well,
it's harder for people to. The problem is though, the longer it goes on,
yeah,
it's harder for people to buy into that.
No, I agree. Yeah,
those people, because we were told this once, and then we did this thing, and then well, how come it's all still bad and everything's shit still then, and why have we got to do it again? And I thought it was, and every time you change something, you're confusing them even more.
I don't think it helped as well, did it? I mean, I know why they did it, but again, this is something that a competent government wouldn't have done. But when the government comes out and says people should be going back to their offices and we should be shopping and supporting the economy, and then like a couple of weeks later, it looked like there was another lockdown was on the way. That's the kind of thing that pisses people off. You know what I'm saying here?
Yeah, well, it's the stuff that we've spoke about before.
Yeah.
On numerous shows, normally a couple of weeks before it happens, it's the hang on a minute. So there's this situation or this thing or whatever. let's apply some common sense. Is that a good idea? Surely, if we do this, this will happen. And then, lo and behold, the inevitable occurs, and then you're just left scratching your head thinking, if I could figure that out.
We've said it many times, haven't we? It's incredible that the average man on the street, woman on the street, could logically do a cause and effect. Oh, but if you do this, won't this happen? And yet the government seems to be taken by surprise every time. Oh, we encourage people to go out and go back to the offices and get spending money again. Oh, hang on, the transmission rate's gone way up.
I'm not sure they are taken by surprise, though, are they? I think they have to appear as though they are. They can't say, yeah, we deliberately did this thing that made something worse.
Yeah. Okay, Mike, let me put this to you, because I think this is quite interesting. It's quite an interesting psychological thing. So earlier we said, was it really helpful that Johnson kept bullshitting and giving false hope to people, because then people get more pissed off when we're back to square one again with the second lockdown and this kind of thing? Do we also think that trying to think of I think I've lost my train of thought, but there was another thing that the government were announcing that's turned out to be just kind of made things worse. Damn it. Okay, let's go on to something else while I think about that. That's maybe something that I can come up with later.
Okay.
So in terms of how we're going after lockdown,
yeah,
bad news in Wales. I don't know if you saw this, Mike. The Welsh government are seriously considering, I think, another lockdown, because already I think their transmission rate in some parts of Wales has gone up to 1.4 in some areas, which, as we've been told, as soon as it's above 1, you cannot hope to have a falling number of cases. It will keep rising, because it means effectively that every infected person is infecting more than one other person. So it will keep exponentially rising. So people of Wales, unfortunately, they may be looking at another lockdown prior to Christmas, which is pretty shit news. Obviously, we can't blame Boris Johnson for that. I don't know how that's happened, but I just thought I'd mention that, because that's obviously big news with the new coronavirus easing of restrictions, so to speak.
Yeah.
The other big news, other than that we discussed before, other than the transition from leisure lockdown to tiers, was the vaccine. I say the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine. There are, I think, 3 or 4 usable vaccines that are currently going through the process. 2 things, Mike. One thing I'm going to hit you with straight away, because this is quite funny. So we became the first country in Europe. In fact, I'm not sure if we were the first in the world to approve the rollout of the Pfizer vaccine. Right? Now,
we're the guinea pigs.
Sorry?
We're the guinea pigs.
We're the guinea pigs. But I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but again, this speaks to this deeply cynical nature of the government, and I think this is what has pissed a lot of people off. Amongst the mixed messaging, is everything seems to have a political layer to it. The government can't just be straight with people. So I don't know if you heard this, but you had government ministers. I think Matt Hancock, who's been one of the most embarrassing ministers through all of this crisis, he came out and tried to claim that the reason we were able to approve this vaccine before anyone else is because of Brexit. And then no more than an hour or so later, the person responsible for being at the head of the regulator that approved it said, no, it's because we're still part of the EU scheme. Like, we're within their regulatory alignment until the 1st of January. That's why we were allowed to do it quicker. And then I think a couple of other government ministers had basically echoed what Hancock said, trying to play politics. And then I mean, it's weird because Boris Johnson actually, when he was asked about it, he refused to say it was because of Brexit, presumably because he realised that Matt Hancock had been made to look a complete dunce when he's contradicted by a professional like an hour or so later. And then even more embarrassingly, Gavin Williamson. Do you remember the education secretary we tore a new arsehole in the summer after he cocked up the student grades and unbelievably kept his job, but then everyone keeps the job as long as their head's up Boris Johnson's arsehole, apparently. He appeared on a radio show, I think LBC, and it wasn't clear whether he meant it as a joke, but he doesn't seem to be a very naturally witty person, so we can't really say. But they asked him if he thought that the reason we got the drug approved before anyone else was because of Brexit, and he actually said, wouldn't say that was the case. But then he proceeded to say that he thought the reason was because we were the best country in the world, and that we had better regulators than the Germans and the Americans. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. Gavin Williamson has form for this. Remember, this is the guy who, when he was the foreign secretary, told Russia to go away and shut up. So he does often resort to the language of the playground. But did you hear about those incidents, Mike? Does that change your opinion of government ministers at all, or what they're doing during this pandemic?
Just reinforces it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. Nothing surprises you anymore, does it?
Unfortunately, not. No. But yeah, I mean, we were the first we were the first country to approve it, and as we said before, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like we can't say that because we approved it a couple of weeks before any other countries, it means it's not safe. What it does mean is that it's ever so slightly less likely to be safe, because that's why you take your time approving serious drugs like vaccines. But in all likelihood, it will be fine.
But to be fair, I mean, okay, we've approved it first. We approved it first, a couple of weeks before everyone else will start approving it. Cool. We've got it in the country. Hospitals have got it. Whatever. Aren't we just testing it on like old folk in care homes?
Very good. Yeah. No. So
and that's obviously not my view, but if it goes wrong, wow.
It's a very good point. No, it's a very good point. So no, you're completely right. And yeah, what this week has also seen is the vaccine has officially arrived in the country. So the vaccine is in hospitals, and I believe it's on its way to care homes right now, because number one priority for getting the vaccine will be residents of care homes and the people who work in care homes. Possibly the reason being because the government has finally learned its lesson from what it did before, where it managed to kill off potentially 20,000 or more people by the ridiculous policy of ejecting people from hospitals without testing them for COVID straight into care homes. So they finally realized, oh my God, that really racks the death toll up quickly. So let's make sure they get the vaccine first. And like you say, the problem with this is it really protecting the most vulnerable, or is it a case of, well, we'll make sure that slightly fewer people die and they can be the guinea pigs. And if anything is wrong with this vaccine that we've rushed through the regulator, well, they were going to die anyway, weren't they?
Yeah. That'll be it. And if there are any side effects, they won't live long enough for us to know.
Yeah, they rolled. That was always going to happen. They were always going to get some horrendous side effect.
Why did his left leg fall off? That's what happens.
It's a natural part of getting old. When you're in a care home, your limbs just fall off all the time.
And the 9 years. Yeah, the 9 years. That was old folk. No, I don't know.
Very sad, but yeah. Yeah, no, I'm inclined to take your cynicism with good heart there, actually. But fingers crossed the regulators aren't quite as reckless or brain dead as certain members of the government are. So, by the way, I thought of that thing I was going to say. Do you remember when I was talking about the inconsistent messaging?
Yeah, yeah.
I was going to say, and I know this has probably been said before in opinion pieces, but isn't it interesting that this has happened under Boris Johnson? Because you could argue that his whole political career has been based on being the good time guy. You know, the person, literally, his greatest quality that everyone always used to say, oh, he makes you laugh, he makes you feel good. You know, he makes you feel like things are going to be okay because things aren't that serious. And what happens as soon as he takes office? He's got the most serious pandemic in a century and the most serious change to our trading relationships since the Second World War. Now, these are things that almost everyone agrees the last thing you want is someone who treats everything as a bit of a joke. And like you say, there's a very fine line between trying to keep people optimistic in the face of great sacrifice and just sounding like you're a tit who doesn't take it seriously. You know, and misleading people effectively. What I mean is, do you think that's a good argument that whatever we think about Boris Johnson as a person, let's separate particularly my political opposition to almost everything he stands for, just viewing him as a prime minister, independent of which party he stands for, do you think his skill set is completely wrong for the situations we're in? Like he's a square peg for when we need a round peg?
Maybe. I just don't want to agree with you.
I was thinking you could see the cogs working. Like, how can I mug him off?
I'm trying hard. Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, though, isn't it? Because is his particular skill set wrong for the things that are happening at this moment in time with regards to actually what's best for the country? Yeah, probably. But will he make everyone feel good about it? Maybe that's what we need.
Do you think that's it? So effectively, what you're saying is, like, he's the equivalent of you're in a room strapped to a chair with electrodes on your genitals and having someone peeling your fingernails off with a sardine key, but he's just there like telling jokes and juggling with his clown makeup on. So he's making you feel like, oh, this isn't so bad.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that sounds pretty much like my ideal situation you described there. So I don't know what I need Boris for.
Right. Okay. So anyone listening to this, remember, Mike, on an average weekend, he loves to get his rocks off. Just hook his genitals up to a car battery.
Oh, yeah.
Get some nipple clamps. Start pinning his fingernails off. He'll love it. Absolutely love it.
I would love it.
So, I don't know if you went out a lot, Mike, now that the tiering system is in place. Did you do any Christmas shopping or get out and about anywhere?
See, I know where you're going with this one. No, not really.
Okay.
No, I haven't. Really had that much. That's not true. I have had. No, I haven't. But the thing is, for me, just before you go where I know you're going, growing. To be Christmas shopping, I don't really like anyway. In particular, the amount of people on a normal year that would be about. My general kind of distaste and disdain for people as a rule keep me away from that sort. That's not true. No, it is. I don't like going shopping with, like, rubbing elbows with the scum. I don't like it.
Scum. Oh dear. Well, I went into Oxford. I went into Oxford this weekend to meet the missus, and yeah, it was pretty damn busy. In sort of,
Most times.
yeah, but I mean, it was. If you're talking about how busy it would normally be at this time of year, it was probably about 90% of what you'd expect in terms of the amount of people on the street. I'll tell you something really funny as well. So obviously we weren't Christmas shopping. We were literally just kind of taking in the atmosphere, generally steering clear of people, just having like a coffee and some lunch outdoors. So yeah, we weren't going to put ourselves at unnecessary risk or whatever. It was just like, soaking up just being around people without being too close to them. But one thing I found really interesting, so there's obviously people all along Corn Market and stuff, busking or trying to flog things or whatever. And the two biggest presences on Corn Market and around that area, the centre of the Oxford High Street, were one group of, I think, about 30 people dotted everywhere was trying to give away free books that were basically full of conspiracy theories about the Illuminati. And the other thing was Christian fundamentalists. And I think I did say to the missus at one point, just like, we came out of lockdown for this. Like, you come up for the Christmas spirit and like, oh, goodwill to all men, and we've got these people just with batshit conspiracy theories, and then these people telling us to love Jesus. I guess at least the Jesus thing was slightly connected to the season, but it was very peculiar. But yeah, it was very busy, and again, most people were cheek by jowl. Now, I'll give them credit. Maybe 60-70% of them were wearing face masks even when they were outside. So, at least, although there were a number of complete penises who, and I know you've seen these people, Mike, it's been said before, if you wear your mask as a chin strap, it's just, it's not doing any good. It's just like, why not just put the mask away? And the other thing is people literally being in shops and whatever with their hooter out. So just kind of across the mouth, nose just completely exposed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I tell you what, I even saw another variation of it, Mike, which probably is a result of what we were talking about, where people are just getting sick of everything. I saw at least, I think, half a dozen people in various places we either went in or were close to, where they were inside with a mask hanging off their ear. They weren't even wearing it. It's like, if you walk in somewhere, you're not wearing anything, people will probably steer clear of you, but they'll probably think, well, maybe they got a medical condition. Not everyone wants to confront people, so they're like, well, maybe they're allowed not to wear a mask. But when you see someone literally with one hanging on their ear and they're standing in a queue or chatting to one of their mates, because obviously people can lower their mask if they're having a drink or something. But yeah, I saw a number of people just hanging off their ear, talking to someone inside. It's like, guys, like, I don't know. I don't know how to. And again, with the people not taking it seriously, Mike, I don't know if you saw a story that came out today, I think in Nottingham, or Nottinghamshire at least. There's a 20-year-old guy got arrested. He had his house raided by the cops. 150 people, I think, in there for a house party.
How big the house?
Well, this is what I was thinking. I was like, I'd love to have a house that was that big. But yeah, apparently he'd had 100 to 150 people there, the police estimated. the vast majority of them on their way out were all fined £200 for being there. But he could be fined up to 10 grand. Now, I'm sure he won't be, but part of you thinks, yeah, just fucking fine him the full whack. I know he's 20 years old, but for fuck's sake, honestly. So who knows? But you know, he's been issued with a court summons, so he could be hit with up to 10 grand. I would imagine the only way he'd get hit with 10 grand is if he kind of refused to attend, just generally was a complete arsehole through the process. He'll probably end up paying a couple of £100 as well and having something on his record. So, you know, there's more and more cases of this where people are just, you know, rules don't apply to me. But then you just keep going, Dominic Cummings.
Yeah.
And okay, Mike, finally, just before we round off, obviously this is going to become very pertinent from the end of the week, because I think there will be an official announcement tomorrow or the next day. Like literally there's no time left now, which is the oven-ready Brexit deal that Johnson lied about. And I just thought, instead of me saying it as kind of a concept, and by the way, how this is related to COVID is two major ways. Is number one is the economic recovery will be completely trashed. And number two, and most importantly for people who want to get back to normal if they have a job, is the vaccine being able to get into this country. So I'm just going to basically, this got leaked to establishment arse licker Robert Peston at the weekend, but this has been known for a while because the government's produced a few of these. So as governments have to do, they have to come up with contingencies for unexpected situations. So the idea of leaving the transition period without a trade agreement at all with the EU, i.e. no deal, whatever Johnson tries to lie about, saying it's an Australian deal or whatever. So we are right on the brink of no deal. So there's a government contingency planning. So I just wanted to go through the bullet points because this illustrates what will happen in January. This isn't even a worst case. This is a reasonable scenario to what the experts like civil servants and mandarins around Whitehall and the government have said is likely to happen. So let me just get this up. So some of the bullet points. Flow rates of medicines and medical products, i.e. vaccines, could initially reduce to 60 to 80% over 3 months, which, if unmitigated, would impact on the supply of medicines and medical products across the UK. Protests and counter-protests taking place all over the UK may absorb significant amounts of police resources. There may also be a rise in public disorder and community tensions. And for anyone thinking, well, why would there be public disorder between, you know, Brexiteers and Remainers? They're just going to have arguments? No, the reason why there'd be disorder is because of the rest of the points. EU and UK fishermen could clash over lost access to historic fishing grounds, and there could be a significant uplift in illegal fishing activities. You know, I don't know, fishing with dynamite. Competing demands on UK government and devolved administration maritime agencies and their assets could put maritime security enforcement and response capabilities at risk. There will be reduced food supply availability, especially of certain fresh products, and supply of some critical dependencies for the food supply chain could be reduced. Low-income groups will be disproportionately affected by any price rises in food and fuel, which are almost certain. Border delays, tariffs, and new regulatory barriers and costs may result in disruption to supply of critical chemicals used in the UK, leading to disruption of essential services. And when they say essential, they mean essential: food, energy, water, and medicine. Economic factors could result in some chemical suppliers reducing operations or closing entirely. By the way, these chemicals include water treatment chemicals, i.e. we may not have safe drinking water in some parts of the country. Border delays could affect local fuel disruption. There will not be wider national level oil shortage, so at least we've got that to feel grateful for. There is a risk of reduction in the supply of medicines for UK veterinary use, which would reduce our ability to prevent and control disease outbreaks, with potential detrimental impacts for animal health and welfare, the environment, wider food safety or availability, and zoonotic disease control, which can directly impact human health. And when you say, well, how can it affect human health? Well, other than things like mad cow disease, etc., literally the pandemic was caused by sicknesses transmitting from animals. Between 40 to 70% of trucks traveling to EU might not be ready for new border controls, which would reduce flow across the short channel crossing to 60 to 80% of normal levels, with maximum queues of 7,000 trucks in Kent and delays of 2 days. The worst disruption would probably subside within 3 months. The transition from internal security cooperation with the EU to non-EU mechanisms may not be smooth and seamless, and may result in a mutual reduction in capability to tackle crime and international terrorism. And a very worrying number 12, around 1 in 20 local authorities are at risk of total financial collapse as a result of higher service demand caused by a disruptive EU exit. So those are the main bullet points. What do you think of those, Mike?
A lot to take in.
Mm-hmm.
You've not done a Boris, have you? You've not buttered that up.
Well, I did say there'll be no oil shortages.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah, you're right, actually. You know what? Cool then. I'm down with that.
Yeah.
Excellent. Sounds great. No oil shortages. Great. What else you need to say about it? We're not going to be short of oil. So, no fucking problem. What are you whinging about?
I mean, just a reminder as well, Mike, that none of this was inevitable because we had an opportunity to extend the transition period, which most reasonable people would probably say in the middle of dealing with a global pandemic would have been a good idea. I don't know about you. But then there are more but then there are more cynical people who think that this is deliberate, that they did it this way, because the chaos that will ensue in January, they will just blame on COVID rather than being criticised for their Brexit decision.
Yeah, okay. I'd probably subscribe to that, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it. You can see it.
It's incredibly cynical, but what do we have other than cynicism? Because, you know, no reasonable government would have done this. And again, it's worth coming back to it. Boris Johnson said he had an oven-ready deal. A lot of people that I've seen and commenting and not necessarily spoken to personally, but heard in interviews and whatever, they literally voted for him because he kept banging on about oven-ready Brexit deal. Brexit was going to be over if you vote for me. And here we are. And like literally, this is the last of last minutes. If we do not agree this trade deal within 2 days, we are in no deal territory. And I won't, I'm not going to go on and on about the ramifications from that. But it's worth saying that even if we were to agree a deal, the majority of what was in that report will still happen. So there's not going to be a last minute reprieve. You'll take off probably the very worst things, maybe, but there will still be massive disruption at the border. Because remember, we had a border where we were in a single market and customs union where there were very few checks. Most lorries got through and were waved through within 5 or 10 minutes of arriving at the border. We now have to have entire customs declarations, searches of, I think, every truck. Now, I feel terrible for truck drivers, haulage drivers. Who the fuck wants to travel across Europe, arrive at a country's border, and then potentially be trapped either in your lorry or in Portaloos for 16, 20 hours?
Don't sound like fun to me.
Yeah, and then you don't even then mention what's going to happen in Ireland with the Good Friday Agreement, but that's a topic for another time. But the reason why this is so pertinent to COVID particularly, and the people who think that we've got the light at the end of the tunnel is here, is that COVID vaccine will most likely need to come across the same borders.
Yeah.
How are you going to know what to wave through? And I've heard government ministers, Mike. I've heard government ministers saying, "Well, we've not diverged from the EU yet, so we'll just wave through a lot of lorries and whatever." And do you know whose eyes will light up saying that? Smugglers and people traffickers. They will literally know that there is a country that's effectively saying they will not police their borders correctly. Not to mention the amount of people who voted Brexit specifically to control the borders.
Yeah.
And the last note on this farce is that what's the backup plan to get the vaccines here if they are held up in hours and hours of queues at Dover? Military airlifts. They've actually said we're going to send military aircraft to Belgium to pick up vaccines and airlift them in like we were a third world nation.
I mean, I guess if that's what we've got to do, then that's what we've got to do. Fucking shame that that really even needs to be discussed as a.
I know, right? I feel bad for the people who literally did vote for Johnson, genuinely believing that this discussion would be over by now. We wouldn't have to think about it anymore. Because he gave that impression to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And
well, isn't it? Like it's always, I mean, you're always kind of chancing it a little bit, aren't you, when you believe anything a politician says? So, but at some point you have to, don't you?
Yeah. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, Mike.
You have to buy into something at some point and believe, even though your mind's probably saying, "I've been lied to 1,000 times before." you have to believe and just go for, okay, this is the person who I think is representing what I believe or what I want the best.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I mean, how much of that they actually deliver, or don't completely do a U-turn on and go back on, you're at their mercy, really, aren't you? Once they've got your vote.
Oh yeah, I mean, then we're talking about the completely anti-democratic nature of our voting system. But I mean, but on that one point, Mike, can you understand where this disconnect comes from? Because I'm not going to go off on one saying everyone who voted Brexit was racist or everyone who still supports Brexit is racist. But we know there were significant amounts of Brexit voters. The most important thing to them was controlling the borders. This is what swirls around my head, is why isn't anyone responsible in the media asking questions about how can you say you will avoid build-ups on the border by waving trucks through, and then at the same time say only we can control the borders? Or now Brexit's happened, we've got sovereignty and control of our borders. They're just, it's the biggest cognitive dissonance. How do you reconcile that with someone? How do you say to a Brexit voter, so we've got control of our borders, have we? Did you hear there's going to be massive queues at the border? And apparently the way they're thinking of dealing with it is waving a lot of the trucks through without checking them. I mean, that's how people traffickers get people into countries. Like, what do you think about that? I'm just asking the question.
I mean, so I was going to make a really crude joke about positive impact on the sex trade, but I think he made me even inside my own head.
Yeah, that is a bit. That would have been a bit far. I love the way that you didn't tell the joke, but you explained that you were going to tell the joke.
I'll tell myself out. Yeah. No, you know, oh, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, is it worrying that came into my head? Maybe, but fuck it, I'll share it with you all.
Oh, do you know what? Do you know what, Mike? I'm going to say it straight off. You are well within your rights to make a joke about something as horrendous as sex trafficking, because we should be able to joke about anything. And joking about something doesn't mean you don't think it's disgusting and it needs to be stamped out. You know, people make jokes about horrendous things, and a lot of it is to make people deliberately feel uncomfortable. You know, to say, oh, yeah, that kind of does go on, doesn't it? So, yeah, I don't know. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe next time, Mike, we'll have official no deal to talk about, and if we do, I think there's a lot of things to unpack from that, because it's going to affect us all really, really badly.
There'll be a lot to dive into there.
Well, but for now, you know, we've got a little bit more freedom that I guess we should be grateful for. It's the lead up to Christmas, and you know, for all the kiddies who might be listening, I mean, you shouldn't really be listening. This is an adult show, but if there are any kiddies listening, you know, don't worry. The border problems won't start until the 31st of December, 11 p.m. So Santa, I'm sure, will have no issues getting over here. Anything to add, Mike?
I was going to make a joke about Santa entering his sack, but you know what? It's beneath me.
Fuck's sake, Mike.
It's fine.
Saying that to kids, honestly. Tell you what, the government should do. The government should legitimately answer questions about the vaccine by saying, "Oh yeah, we put it on our list to Santa. Santa's going to deliver the vaccine."
Yeah.
No one better placed.
Boys and girls, Santa will deliver you a vaccine.
Yeah, but only if you're very good, and by good I mean voted for Brexit. I could definitely see them saying that. Anyway, anything to add, Mike, before we say goodbye for this week? Huh?
It's nothing. To all the children that can't vote, yeah?
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah. Yeah, the
joke. No, just, you know, hit that like, hit that subscribe, the usual shit we come out with.
Yeah, and don't forget we have a podcast.
Yeah,
Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We talk about what's happening in the here and now in the COVID situation on YouTube. But if you listen to some of our old podcasts, we do the classic. We take a subject, we debate it to death using Wikipedia and our own sense of logic, and you know, there's a few arguments, a few jokes. Mike makes some obscene comments, that kind of thing.
Me? Yeah. So,
hell no.
Yeah. Oh hell no. Yeah, you catch. Yeah, but all, you know, like I think you said YouTube. You catch us on YouTube. You can also find me on YouPorn, YouJizz. Yeah.
Right. And on that despicable note, we will grow you next time, people. Please stay safe and keep the Christmas spirit rolling. And we will see you next time.